I was standing in my kitchen, halfway through a cold brew and a crossword, when I glanced out the window and saw a woman in a sequined cover-up cannonball into my pool like it was the Bellagio fountain. That would have been weird enough on its own, except she was followed by a half-dozen people in tuxedos and gowns. At 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Without asking. And one of them, I kid you not, had a selfie stick and a glass of rose. I choked on the word, umbrella, and bolted outside just in time to watch Karen, yes, that Karen from the HOA, float by on a flamingo float like she owned the place. Now, I'm not a man who angers easily. I've lived in this suburban circus for 5 years, and I've learned to pick my battles. I'm the type who files paperwork, gathers receipts, plays the long game. But something about Karen parading her VIP guests through my backyard like it was the set of The Real Housewives of HOA County ignited a new level of disbelief. I didn't yell. I didn't stomp. I simply leaned on the railing and asked, "Pool party invitation get lost in the mail, or are we just doing home invasions now?" Karen blinked, sipped her mimosa, and said, "Oh, I thought you were away. And your pool is so elegant, it'd be a crime to let it go unused. Besides, it's for networking." She gestured to a man in a blazer standing knee-deep on the pool steps, swiping through LinkedIn like that somehow justified breaking and entering. I recognized 2 of the others from town council meetings, people with local influence, all of whom looked slightly uncomfortable but not enough to leave. That's the magic of Karen. Audacity coded in just enough plausible deniability to make people hesitate. I didn't argue. I went back inside, pulled up my security footage, backed it up to the cloud, and made a quiet phone call. Not to the police. Not yet. I called Leo, my 13-year-old nephew, and the closest thing I have to a chaos consultant. "Get the dye kit," I said. "The one for the prank pool project." He whooped loud enough to blow out my eardrum and said, "Avatar mode activated. Here's something you should know, my pool is smart. I built it that way. Motion sensors, chemical regulators, an app that controls everything from the filter to the lighting preset. Last year, Leo and I installed a custom system for April Fools. A harmless blue skin dye, totally organic, activated through the jet. We tested it on ourselves, laughed for 3 days, and never used it again. Until now. I gave it 20 minutes. I wanted them to get nice and soaked, skin open to the dye. Then I pulled out my phone and hit engage. I watched from the patio as a fine mist drifted through the water. At first, nothing. Then confusion. Then panic. Karen sat up on the flamingo, stared at her arms, and screamed like she'd discovered alien blood. The others flailed to the edge, scrambling out like the water had turned to lava. They were blue. Every single one of them. Not just a little smudge here and there. Full smuff mode. The dye reacts with heat and moisture, see, and it lasts for days. And it gets darker when you try to scrub it. Karen grabbed a towel, tried to wipe her face, then shrieked even louder when it turned indigo. "What did you do?" she screeched, storming toward me like a Technicolor banshee. I held up my phone, screen showing my app. "Oh no," I said, deadpan. Did the exclusive VIP pool experience not live up to expectations? I didn't even try to hide the grin. Next time, maybe don't break into someone's backyard and swim in their water like it's a community splash pad. She threatened to sue. Of course she did. Then she said she'd report me to the HOA. I reminded her that I wasn't the one trespassing, and that the entire thing had been recorded. Multiple angles. High definition. Including her winking at one of the council members while saying, "He won't mind, he's never home during the week." By the time they left, dripping blue and swearing revenge, I had already sent a few choice clips to my lawyer. And to the local news tip line. I wasn't planning to escalate at first. I just wanted them gone, embarrassed, and possibly off my lawn forever. But Karen didn't like being embarrassed. And Karen doesn't back down. Especially not when her social reputation is involved. She came back the next day, blotchy blue hands still glowing, and handed me a letter printed on fake HOA letterhead that said I was being fined for chemical sabotage. That's when I realized this wasn't just a battle over pool water. This was a war over power, territory, ego. Karen had been trying to climb the local ladder for years, using HOA antics, local council flattery, and desperate charm disguised as leadership. And I had just knocked her down several rungs in front of her audience. She couldn't let that slide. I saw it in her eyes, the twitchy, red-veined look of someone who'd rather torch the neighborhood than lose face. So I played it cool, took the bogus fine, photographed it, called a contact at the state real estate licensing board. Then I started digging. Because if Karen wanted a war, she should have picked someone who doesn't have a brother-in-law in cybercrime, a nephew who programs drone surveillance for fun, and a personal love for building traps just believable enough to be legal. And if she really thought turning blue in my pool was the worst thing that could happen to her, well, she was about to learn that I don't just play the long game. I build it, one sarcastic move at a time. The day after the pool party fiasco, I expected Karen to hide her cerulean shame for at least a week. I was wrong. At exactly 8:03 a.m., she marched down my driveway in oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, clutching a bright blue folder like it contained the nuclear code. Her hands were still tinted like a blueberry smoothie. I didn't even have time to sip my coffee before she rang the doorbell 3 times in rapid, impatient succession. Leo, who was already up editing the slow-motion footage of her pool exit for TikTok, looked at me and whispered, "Should I cue the trapdoor?" I told him to stand down. For now. I opened the door with my best fake smile. Karen. Still blue, I see. I'd offer sunscreen, but I hear it just sets the color deeper. She forced a tight-lipped grin and handed me the folder. "You're being fined by the HOA for an unsanctioned chemical event," she said, as if she were announcing my exile from the kingdom. "Your pool released unidentified substances into the environment. It's a serious violation of Article 7, subsection D of our covenant." I flipped open the folder. It was a printout of a Word document, Comic Sans font, poorly formatted, with no signatures and a header that read, "Official Home Owner Action Notice, OICHAN." I resisted the urge to laugh. "You just made this up, didn't you?" I asked. "Is this the HOA or a third-grade book report?" Karen bristled. As interim president of the HOA, I cut her off. "There hasn't been a vote in over a year. Interim implies someone appointed you. Who exactly made you president?" She didn't answer. Because the answer, of course, was herself. I'd ignored her fake authority for years. Everyone had. She loved throwing around titles like community director and neighborhood chairwoman, but none of them actually existed in our bylaws. Now that she'd lost face, she was clawing for legitimacy. "You can take it up with the board," she huffed. "We're holding an emergency meeting tonight. At my house." That got my attention. HOA meetings were supposed to be at the community center, with notices given at least 7 days in advance. But Karen was bending the rules again. Desperate people always do. "Fine," I said. "I'll be there. But I'm bringing a copy of the real bylaws, just in case your fantasy legislation needs a reality check." That night, Leo and I showed up fashionably 5 minutes late, just enough to irritate her. Karen's house looked like it had been staged by an overzealous wedding planner, folding chairs in perfect rows, a podium with fake marble contact paper, even a microphone connected to a karaoke speaker. There were maybe 10 people there, mostly older residents who just wanted to keep their hedges trimmed and taxes low. And then there were the VIPs. The same ones from the pool, still faintly blue, all seated front row like she was hosting the State of the Union. Karen launched into a speech full of big words she didn't understand. "We've experienced an egregious attack on community unity," she said, pointing vaguely toward me. "Chemical warfare in a residential pool is no laughing matter." Leo nudged me. "Did she just say warfare?" I nodded. "Next she'll accuse me of violating the Geneva Convention." When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I just walked up to the podium, dropped a fat binder labeled Actual HOA Bylaws, and let the thud echo through the room. Karen's not president. There's no clause allowing impromptu meetings. And Article 9 says no fines can be levied without an official vote by a quorum, which we definitely don't have here tonight. Murmurs spread through the room. A retired dentist in the back raised his hand and asked, "Wait, is this even a real meeting?" Karen turned red under her blue. "You're being disruptive," she snapped. "You need to leave." I folded my arms. "You're holding a fake meeting in your living room to fine me for trespassing you committed. I'm not going anywhere." The karaoke mic squealed with feedback. A man in a bow tie, one of her VIPs, leaned over and whispered something. Karen's eyes twitched. Then, like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a flaming hat, she shouted, "Well, if he won't leave, maybe it's time we replace him." I blinked. "Replace me as what? I'm just a guy who owns a pool." Karen smirked. "No, you're the head of the neighborhood safety subcommittee. Which, to be clear, is not a real thing." But apparently she'd printed out an official-looking chart with new roles she invented, and I was now responsible for outdoor hazard compliance. Her logic was that since I'd failed to prevent myself from booby-trapping my pool, I had violated my imaginary duties and should be removed. "You're firing me from a job I never accepted for a crime you committed," I said. "Have you considered running for Congress?" The meeting fell apart. Neighbors left grumbling. One guy loudly said, "I just came for cookies." But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, I found 2 orange cones and a laminated sign at the edge of my yard that read, "Under HOA investigation, do not enter pool area." The sign had a small printed logo that looked suspiciously like a stock image of a scale of justice. Karen had crossed the line from annoying to obsessive. So I decided to flip the script. I contacted Helen, the actual elected HOA secretary, someone Karen had tried to edge out months ago with passive-aggressive newsletters. Helen had documentation, record, and, as luck would have it, she also had a grudge. Together, we compiled every fake fine, every phony roll, every unauthorized meeting Karen had conducted over the past year. We even found that she'd billed the HOA fund, a very real and limited account, for community development, which included a receipt from a spa called Sea of Serenity. Blue exfoliating mud mask. I nearly fell out of my chair. I emailed the file to every homeowner in the neighborhood. No drama. No commentary. Just a PDF titled Karen's HOA Activities, a factual timeline. Within hours, the neighborhood message board exploded. Replies ranged from, "She charged us for bath bombs?" to "This explains the glitter cannon at the Easter egg hunt." Someone made a meme of Karen's face turning blue with the caption, "HOA, horribly overbearing authority." Leo printed it on a t-shirt. Karen tried to fire back. She posted an open letter accusing me of techno-bullying and orchestrating a smear campaign using illegal Wi-Fi. She called an emergency vote to ban me from the HOA. Unfortunately for her, no one showed up, because I had already scheduled an official vote, at the proper location with full notice, signed by Helen and approved by 2 other legitimate board members. When Karen arrived, late, disheveled, and still faintly snuff-colored, she found a real ballot box, real minutes being taken, and a roomful of homeowners ready to end her reign. When the votes were counted, it was unanimous. Karen was removed from any and all leadership roles, real or imagined. Her face sagged like a deflated pool float. She stormed out without a word, leaving behind a stack of her DIY finds that I later used as kindling for a celebratory bonfire. I wasn't looking to dig any deeper. Honestly, if Karen had just taken her dethroning with the grace of a regular person instead of a bootleg dictator, I might have let the whole pool saga fade into suburban legend. But her ego didn't come with a reverse gear. And that business card, matte black, silver embossed, obnoxiously heavy, was a breadcrumb. One that led straight to the truth behind Karen's VIP guest list. The card belonged to someone named Miles DeWitt, CEO of something called Horizon Nest Realty. I'd never heard of it, but the logo matched the property developer banners I'd seen pop up around the neighboring district, mostly vacant land with future luxury living signs plastered across chain-link fences. A quick background search through the state database confirmed it. Horizon Nest was registered barely 6 months ago, with Karen listed as a community integration consultant. I nearly spat out my tea. Integration? Karen couldn't even integrate herself into a swim cap without creating chaos. Leo and I dove into a research binge. Miles DeWitt was slick. The kind of guy who showed up to town planning meetings in a $2,000 suit and used phrases like monetize local charm and optimize neighbor equity. His whole shtick was buying up distressed properties and flipping them into full luxury homes for urban expats desperate to escape the city. And he'd clearly set his sights on our neighborhood. Why? Because we weren't part of a formal municipality. Our HOA was technically self-governed, and without a strong charter or legal teeth, it was vulnerable to outside pressure. That explained Karen's sudden obsession with HOA rolls, fake fines, and blue chemical propaganda. She wasn't trying to punish me. She was trying to scare me into selling. Or better yet, get me disqualified from owning property under some invented violation clause. And I wasn't the only one. 3 homes down, old Mr. Castellano had recently sold his place for health reasons, but I remembered him jogging every morning with a Doberman that could outrun a Tesla. His house had been bought, quietly, by a shell company owned by Horizon Nest. I went to visit Helen. She was in the middle of alphabetizing receipts for last year's HOA barbecue when I told her everything. The spa reimbursements, the realty firm, Karen's fake leadership titles. It all clicked. She narrowed her eyes like a hawk sighting prey. She's trying to soft evict people. Create drama, shake their confidence, get them to sell before they realize what their homes are actually worth. She was furious. I asked if there was any record of official communication between Karen and Horizon Nest. Helen grinned. No. But there is an HOA email account she insisted we create. And she never logged out of it. We logged in. Jackpot. The inbox was full of poorly written drafts addressed to Miles D., all in Karen's usual mess of capital letters and ellipses. Secured another one subject line read. Another said, told him pool dye was a malfunction. We're covered. There were attachments too. Photos of various houses in the neighborhood, including mine, marked with notes like needs pressure campaign or likely to cave if threatened W/zoning fine. And there, buried in the thread, was a message from Miles himself. Close 3 more before next quarter and we'll greenlight your board seat at the new development. Still need the pool guy gone, he's stalling the numbers. I sat back and stared at the screen. So that was the real game. Karen had turned our HOA into a Trojan horse, hollowed out and filled with fake authority, hoping to convert the whole community into a gated Horizon Nest clone. And I was the last obstacle on her spreadsheet. Not because I was special. Just because I didn't break. That same night, I submitted the entire email thread, along with security footage, forged fines, and a few colorful screenshots of Karen's blue pool meltdown, to the County Housing Authority and the Better Business Bureau. But I wasn't going to stop there. No, if Karen wanted to play this like a high-stakes takeover, I was going to return the favor. So I called the one person who hated gentrifiers more than I did. My cousin Rachel, a real estate attorney who once made a Wall Street hedge fund cry during cross-examination. Rachel showed up 2 days later in heels sharp enough to puncture tires and a suit so lethal even my hedges seemed intimidated. "You want this scorched earth," she said, flipping through the evidence. "I like it. Let's pull the pin." Step 1. I filed a formal cease and desist on Horizon Nest's signage and presence in our neighborhood under false advertising and unauthorized solicitation. Step 2. We notified the State Planning Commission that multiple property acquisitions had been conducted under fraudulent pretenses. Step 3. We filed a class complaint with signatures from 27 homeowners, alleging coercion, psychological intimidation, and falsified HOA documentation, courtesy of Karen. But the real fun began when Rachel sent Karen a legal notice requiring her to appear at a civil hearing regarding neighborhood fraud, HOA impersonation, and breach of fiduciary duties. That broke the dam. 3 days later, I walked out to grab the mail and found a Horizon Nest for sale sign in Karen's lawn, with temporarily withdrawn spray-painted across it. The podium was gone. The cones vanished. And so had Karen. Her car was missing, blinds shut tight, front porch eerily empty. But I knew better. She wasn't gone. She was hiding. Because she still had one card left. That card arrived in the form of a code enforcement officer named Greg. He showed up the next morning with a clipboard and a sour expression. "Anonymous complaint," he said, tapping the sheet. "Apparently your pool filtration system violates noise ordinances." I smirked. "Want to hear how loud it is?" I walked over, tapped my phone, and activated silent mode. Greg stood there awkwardly as the pool made a faint hum. "That's quieter than my refrigerator," I said. "You want a reading?" I showed him the decibel app. 42. Greg sighed. I figured it was crap. But protocol's protocol. He was just about to leave when Leo came running up, breathless and grinning. "Uncle, look at this." He held up his phone. On screen was a video from our drone cam. It showed Karen, 2 nights earlier, sneaking through the neighborhood with a flashlight and planting something near my fence. Greg leaned in. "What is that?" Leo zoomed in. It was a cheap Bluetooth speaker buried under mulch, set to emit a high-pitched whine at random intervals, enough to trigger a fake noise complaint. Greg's eyes widened. "So she planted the noise herself?" I nodded. "Want to see the time stamp? It's the night before your report." Greg rubbed his forehead. "Yeah, this is going straight into my file. Thanks." By that afternoon, Karen's actions had triggered a full code enforcement audit, not on me, but on her. Turns out she'd converted her garage into an illegal guest suite for visiting Horizon Nest consultants and had been funneling power through a second breaker box to avoid detection. Leo and I watched from the porch as 2 county inspectors knocked on her door, then started photographing the backyard. Her VIP days were officially over. I thought that might be the end of it, but then my phone buzzed. It was Rachel. "You better sit down," she said. "Karen just filed a lawsuit. She's accusing you of harassment, sabotage, and emotional distress." Courtroom proceedings are rarely cinematic, but the day Karen dragged me into civil court wearing a pastel power suit, navy blue heels, and what I can only describe as residual smuff tint on her knuckles, the entire building practically vibrated with drama. She showed up with 2 lawyers, one clean-cut, one sweating, and a stack of printed screenshots, most of which were blurry stills from my pool camera, highlighted in neon pink. Her opening argument was that I had willfully dyed her and several esteemed guests without consent, inciting permanent reputational damage, trauma, and a loss of professional opportunity. She claimed the dye triggered a skin condition. She claimed I had installed dangerous prank infrastructure. She even claimed Leo had weaponized drones in an aggressive campaign of neighborhood intimidation. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with no tolerance for nonsense, asked Karen's lawyer if he had evidence of the skin condition. He produced a photo of Karen's leg with what looked like a mild sunburn and a note from a holistic skincare advisor. The judge raised one eyebrow. "Is that scented paper?" The lawyer confirmed it was lavender-scented. The judge didn't laugh. But she didn't stop me from smirking. My lawyer, Rachel, stayed calm, collecting every absurdity like trophies. When it was our turn, she stood with the composure of someone who'd buried bigger sharks than Karen in paperwork. "Your Honor," Rachel began, sliding a large binder onto the bench, "what we have here is not a case of harassment or sabotage. We have a case of provable trespassing, forgery, intimidation, and an attempted real estate manipulation campaign, spearheaded by the plaintiff. She clicked a remote. A monitor lit up with crisp drone footage. Karen sneaking into my yard at night, planting the noise device. Cut to a second clip, her directing people into my pool, mimosa in hand. Then stills of the forged HOA letters. The gavel hadn't even hit yet, and Karen's left lawyer already looked like he was plotting a career change. The courtroom murmured as we walked them through the timeline. Rachel presented emails from Karen to Horizon Nest Realty, with language like soft targeting and leverage points. We handed over internal HOA emails, showing how Karen had self-appointed herself to power and manipulated neighbors into submission. The final blow was a screenshot of a text from Karen to Miles DeWitt that read, "Once I get the pool guy out, the rest will fall like dominoes." Karen objected, loudly and theatrically, claiming those emails were private correspondence between consenting adults. The judge dryly asked what exactly they were consenting to. Karen went quiet for the first time in days. The judge instructed the bailiff to take the entire case file into review and scheduled a continuation hearing to allow the county's Civil Integrity Unit to investigate. That's right, Karen's ridiculous lawsuit had blown open the door for a full legal audit. Not just of her actions, but of Horizon Nest. On the courthouse steps, news had already spread. Local reporters swarmed with cameras. I avoided the spotlight, but Leo, who had dressed in a t-shirt reading Avatar Pool Club Founder, was busy giving interviews like he'd just won a Nobel Prize for tactical pranking. Karen tried to leave quickly, head down, but one reporter caught her on mic asking, "Ms. Langenstein, are you stepping down from your HOA duties during the investigation?" Karen's reply, "I am the HOA." She then promptly tripped over a loose cobblestone. The footage aired on Channel 6 for 3 straight days. You'd think that would have been her breaking point. But no. Karen didn't vanish. She regrouped. The next move came through back channels. An email landed in my inbox. Anonymous, but the writing style was unmistakable. A hurricane of ellipses, unnecessary capitalization, and veiled threat. It accused me of destroying a woman's legacy and collaborating with known anarchists to dismantle peaceful property development. Peaceful. The word hung in my head like a punchline. This was the same woman who'd trespassed into my pool, targeted my home with sabotage, and tried to fake a government seal on an HOA sign. But the most alarming line in the email wasn't the threat. It was this: "You might have won the court battle, but the development contract is still active. And you can't stop what's already in motion." I called Rachel. She pulled property records that night. 3 more houses had quietly changed hands, 2 of them within the last month. Horizon Nest was accelerating. Karen was losing the PR war, but behind the scenes, she'd laid groundwork that might outlast her drama. This wasn't just about embarrassing me anymore. It was about flipping an entire block. So I went nuclear. Not literally, of course, but with the most devastating weapon in modern America: public records and bureaucratic patience. First, we filed Freedom of Information Act requests on Horizon Nest's permit filings. We found inconsistencies, zoning requests disguised as infrastructure proposals, buried under shell LLCs. Then we distributed a flyer to every home in the neighborhood outlining exactly how Horizon Nest operated, identifying vulnerable homeowners, using scare tactics, lowballing them with buyouts, and quietly converting the properties into prefab luxury shells. Next came the town hall. We booked the real community center, this time legally, and invited everyone. Karen tried to get it canceled by claiming we were organizing an illegal protest. The mayor's office sent someone just to observe. What they observed was a slideshow presentation of Horizon Nest's tactics across 5 counties, backed by documents and testimony. We exposed how Karen had manipulated votes, falsified budgets, and used HOA authority as a springboard to personal gain. The best moment was when Mr. Castellano showed up. Yes, the jogger with the Doberman, having learned his home was being listed on the Horizon Nest site while he was still living there. Apparently they had filed preemptive marketing materials based on an assumed transition. By the end of the night, 42 homeowners had signed a petition to dissolve the existing HOA structure and reinstate it under an independent review board. Karen's support base evaporated. A man who'd once defended her at the pool stood up and said, "I just wanted to sell my house, not join a cult." 3 days later, the town issued a stop order on all Horizon Nest-related development permits in our area, pending fraud investigation. Karen's consultancy title was scrubbed from the Horizon website. Her LinkedIn changed from community strategist to currently seeking opportunities. No one knew whether she'd been fired, resigned, or eaten alive by corporate lawyers. But her influence was gone. What remained was the fallout. Karen's house, once the hub of power and pastel tyranny, was now quiet. The cones, podium, signs, all gone. The VIPs had stopped calling. Someone said she'd been spotted in town, heavily bundled and unrecognizable, trying to return 10 boxes of unsold, HOA-strong mugs to a print shop. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then one morning, I got a knock on the door. It was Karen. No sunglasses, no entourage. Just her, standing in my driveway, holding something. A mason jar. "It's dye," she said. "I found the same stuff you used. I tested it on my arm. It fades in 3 days." I blinked. You came to tell me that?" The peace didn't return all at once. It crept in slowly, like cautious sunlight after a bad storm. Neighbors stopped whispering in grocery aisles, the HOA message board went from caps lock rants to plant swap invites, and I even saw Mr. Rosenberg wave at me from his porch with both hands, like I'd just won a Nobel Peace Prize in passive-aggressive suburban warfare. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Not until I dealt with the last loose end, the one Karen had tried to bury beneath noise complaints, lawsuits, and half-baked leadership titles. Miles DeWitt. I hadn't forgotten him. The man in the blazer. The LinkedIn villain with a portfolio full of corporate snake oil. While Karen's empire had collapsed like a souffle under a jackhammer, Miles had gone radio silent. Horizon Nest Realty still existed, barely. The website had been stripped of all staff bios. The Contact Us form redirected to a Gmail address. And yet, 3 properties in our neighborhood remained listed under their holding companies. That meant 3 families were still under contract, or worse, already gone. So I called one of them, Mrs. Lopez, whose house was a few blocks over and had mysteriously gone dark right around the time Karen first turned blue. She answered, surprised, but not hostile. When I explained who I was and why I was calling, there was a pause. Then she said, "We didn't want to sell. But we were told if we didn't comply, the HOA would cite us for non-conforming architecture. We just had our roof redone. We couldn't afford a battle." My jaw tightened. "Karen told you that?" "No," she said. "Some guy in a suit. Said he worked with her. Told us the safety subcommittee flagged our home." There it was. Karen's imaginary title, used as a real threat. I thanked her and hung up. The pieces clicked together. Horizon Nest's model wasn't just buying up homes. It was leveraging fake HOA authority to scare residents into selling below value. Miles wasn't a CEO. He was a glorified con artist in a tailored jacket. And Karen had been his puppet, dancing on a string of cheap authority and desperate ambition. So I dug deeper. Rachel helped me submit a formal complaint to the state's Corporate Oversight Division. We cited coercion, false representation, and real estate fraud. But she warned me, this guy's not local. He'll bounce as soon as he feels heat. So we needed to act fast. And publicly. That's when Leo had his finest idea yet. "What if we beat him at his own game?" he said, spinning around in his gaming chair like a Bond villain in basketball shorts. He used fake authority to trick people. We use real attention to scare him back into the hole he crawled out of. We launched a website. Nothing flashy, just a clean layout, public records, timelines, video clips of Karen's HOA theatrics, and a banner that read, "Know your neighborhood. The Horizon Nest Files. Within a day, it had 3,000 views. By the end of the week, the number hit 25,000, thanks to a local blogger who called it the wildest HOA saga in modern history. We didn't name names directly. We didn't need to. The receipts spoke for themselves. And just like that, the curtain pulled back on the final act. It was a Tuesday morning when Miles DeWitt finally broke cover. He arrived in a black sedan, wearing sunglasses and an expression that said, "I've never been told no." I watched from the porch as he marched up my driveway, flanked by two associates who looked like they'd been pulled from a failed reality show about luxury timeshares. He didn't knock. He just stood there, perfectly still, expecting me to open the door like I was under his command. I opened it slow, leaned against the frame. "You're the pool guy?" he asked. "No," I said. "I'm the guy who owns the house you tried to flip." He didn't laugh. "You've made quite the mess. Public defamation, data leaks, unverified legal documents. Everything we posted is public record," I said. "And I have copies of the emails between you and Karen, along with the footage of your VIP event, trespassing on private property." He exhaled through his nose. "What do you want?" I smiled. "Simple. I want you gone. I want Horizon Nest to pull out of this neighborhood. I want those 3 homes released from contract. And I want an email sent to every resident you contacted stating clearly that your development project is dead." He crossed his arms. "And if I refuse?" Behind me, Leo stepped into view holding a camcorder. "Then you'll be tomorrow's headline on 3 local news sites and a Reddit post currently sitting at 78,000 upvotes." Miles didn't blink, but his associates shifted uncomfortably. "You can't blackmail me," he said. "No," I replied. "But I can expose you. Every legal channel, every oversight body, every real estate ethics committee from here to Sacramento. You think this is bad press? Wait until someone starts digging into your company's Florida properties." That got him. He stared a few seconds longer, then turned without another word. He climbed into his sedan and pulled away. That afternoon, every Horizon Nest sign was removed. Their listings disappeared. By the weekend, an email went out to every resident stating that Horizon Nest Realty has ceased all development operations in the Fort Bend area. The tone was dry. The message was clear. We'd won. But the final victory came a week later, when a neighborhood meeting convened. Not in Karen's living room, not under false pretenses, but in the community center, legally booked, transparently run. Helen took the floor with grace. She introduced a new HOA structure. Voluntary, limited in scope, focused purely on maintenance and shared space scheduling. No power grabs. No presidents for life. Just neighbors. Together. We voted. It passed. Afterward, people lingered. Jokes were made. Kids ran between chairs. Leo showed a slideshow of The Great Blue Flood, complete with dramatic music and a fake movie trailer. And in the corner, someone tapped me on the shoulder. It was Karen. She looked different. Not humble, exactly. But smaller. Human. "I'm moving," she said. "Figured you'd want to know." "Out of state?" I asked. She nodded. "Oregon. My sister has a guest house." There was an awkward pause. She shifted. "I wasn't always like this. After my husband died, I needed purpose. Structure. I thought if I could fix things, control things, people would respect me." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, I replied, "People don't respect control. They respect honesty. You could have had that." She nodded. "I know." Then she handed me a small plastic bag. Inside was a flamingo pool float, deflated, patched with duct tape, slightly stained blue. "Souvenir," she said, with a crooked half-smile. "In case you ever forget how crazy things got." I took it. Karen left that night. No dramatic send-off. No curtain call. Just one more figure fading from a stage that had grown far too crowded. And for the first time in months, the neighborhood felt quiet. Real quiet. The kind you don't notice until you realize you'd forgotten what peace sounds like. Later that summer, Leo and I repainted the pool deck. We adjusted the dye trigger to manual, just in case, and replaced the old sensors with a new AI filter he coded himself. "What should we call it?" he asked. I looked at the float, now mounted above the pool pump like a trophy. "Call it the Karen Protocol," I said. He laughed. "Because sometimes the best revenge isn't blue dye or lawsuits or viral posts. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well. And keeping your pool locked."